Welcome to the Republicans' best case scenario for the upcoming midterms and the governorships, so let's start. And there we go. So first of all, for Ohio, where I would see Mike DeWine being able to not only win by 20%, but maybe even get close to 24% in an absolute red wave scenario, while for Texas, I see Greg Abbott winning by I think 20%, that's a fair take. While for Florida, where I would see Ron DeSantis doing extremely well with Hispanics, and he would be able to win here by a huge margin of 12% to 14%. Yeah, that would be a huge win for Ron DeSantis in his second term re-election bid. So for Maryland, I still see Wes Moore winning here, but it will be really closer than anticipated, but still a safe Democrat win by, I'm guessing, 14-16%, but yeah, that's about it. And now for the likely states. So first of all, for Georgia. So in this state, assuming it's a huge red wave year and Brian Kemp is able to do as well as he did in the primaries, here's the polling, he would be able to absolutely win in an absolute huge landslide against Stacey Abrams. And he would win here almost by a safe margin, by the way, but it would probably be around 10% to 12%. For another likely race, that would be in Kansas. In Kansas, with Laura Kelly, the Democrat, trying to run for re-election against Schmidt. And assuming this is the election day goes terribly for Democrats, there's some form of economic crash just before it. This would mean that the Kansas Republicans would be able to actually win here by a decent margin. It would not be as big as Georgia, but they would win here by 8 to 10% in this red state. And moving on to Arizona, yes, Arizona, where Katie Hobbs has ran one of the worst campaigns by a Democrat in a major race. And the polling, oh yeah, as you can see, Kari Lake is surging in the polls recently, even though it's because of one pollster, but even then there's other pollsters that do show Kari Lake doing way better than Katie Hobbs. And even though Kari Lake would be able to win here, it would not be by a double-digit margin or close to that, but still, Kari Lake would be able to win here by a margin of 6 to 8%, mostly because of Hobbs, but in this red wave scenario, easy win for Kari Lake. And finally, for our first Democrat likely state, that would be in Colorado, where Polis is running for re-election against Heidi Ganal, and the polling has shown that this race has been quite stagnant, even with the third parties and all that sort of stuff. And you can see the pollsters are saying this will be an easy one in our timeline. And what I believe would occur even in a red wave scenario, Polis would be able to win here by a margin of 6 to 8% because it's Colorado and it's quite blue. And now for Nevada, this is where Joe Lombardo has recently been surging by quite a bit in the polls against incumbent Sisolak, by the way. They don't show it yet, but there's been more polling recently that does show Joe Lombardo doing quite well, actually. And it's because of these reasons why I actually do have likely R Nevada, but it would only go for the Republicans by a margin of 5 to 7% and a huge win for the GOP in this race. And now for Illinois. Illinois is really down far in the list, and you can see Pritzker has a lot of money, but in a red wave scenario where everything goes wrong for the Democrats, aka the gas prices go up, the economy crashes on election day, or just something that just gives the Republicans a huge win. You can see right here the polling, or just a huge polling error in the industry, which is why I do think it would not be a lean state. I still see J.B. Pritzker winning here, but we could see some form of a polling error in Illinois, which is why I do have this dropping from that safe margin regularly to only a margin of 5 to 7% in this video, actually. And yeah, the first one that is almost a likely race, that would be Wisconsin. Wisconsin, where Tony Evers, the incumbent, is in a really tough position against Tim Michels. The polling has shown this, as seen by the predictions. The Tossup is right there, and you can see Tim Michels is rising, and it's not a surprise that this race would really be close to a likely margin with a red wave. But I still think Tim Michels, because he's not the incumbent and all that sort of stuff, still doesn't win by a likely margin, but he's still Michaels is able to win here by 3 to 5%. And yeah, so as I was saying, let's go to the next one. So that would be in New Mexico. This is where Mark Ronchetti is trying his best to defeat incumbent Grisham. And here you go, as always, the pollsters. He got the endorsement of Gary Johnson, so alongside the main reason I do have this as a lean state for the GOP is because there's also the chance that the Latino vote really swings hard to the right, and that would be one of the reasons why Mark Ronchetti could win. And in this video, he is able to win here by a margin of 2 to 4%. And now for Oregon. And in this race with Kotek, Drazen, and Betsy Johnson in a three-way election going against each other, you can see right here the polling is showing Drazen doing better than expected and rising in the polls, which is interesting because the more Betsy Johnson drops, the more it seems like Drazen is winning. And because of the vote splitting and just the unpopularity of Democrats in Oregon, alongside all those issues I've mentioned before, I could see in this red wave scenario, I see Drazen winning here by around 2 to 4%, and a kind of like a Youngkin margin in my opinion. And now for the next ones. For Connecticut, where Ned Lamont is running for re-election against Stefanowski in a rematch, as many of you know, but Stefanowski has not done as good. I think he decided to go through the wrong campaigning route, and that's why the race has been stagnant for a while. And Ned Lamont is likely going to win big November, but assuming the GOP has a 2010 style red wave, even then Ned Lamont would be on his way to re-election, and he would win here by not as much regularly, but he would win by 1 to 3%. And now for the next one, for a major one in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania will depend a lot on how Josh Shapiro, Doug Mastriano, and how well the national environment goes for the GOP. And the pollsters, as a lot of you like to see, there we go. And now for the polling right here, it's not looking good for Doug Mastriano, but if the red wave is big enough, he does have a chance at winning, and I would see him winning there by about 1 to 3%, just by a lean margin, in my opinion. So for the first tilt state, let's go to Michigan. This is a race where if the polling error happens yet again in Michigan, this would 100% mean that Tudor Dixon would be able to defeat Gretchen Whitmer, who's trying to run for re-election, and she has caught up Tudor Dixon, and the polling has made this even closer than what I expected, and she would be able to win here by a high tilt margin of 0.75% because of the polling error in the past. And now for Maine, where Mills won by almost 8% in 2018, and Whitmer, many of you know, she almost won by 10%. And in Maine, where Jenna Mills, the incoming governor, is going against Paul LePage, former governor of the state, and the pollsters, what they're saying is that it's probably going to be lean deep, but if the red wave is big enough, as I've said before in the video, Paul LePage and the polling error in Maine, as we saw in the 2020 Maine Senate election, if that happens again, that would 100% mean that Paul LePage would be able to win here by a high tilt margin of 0.75%, assuming the polling industry does it yet again and gets another L. And yeah, and now for the more interesting ones that are not high tilt states. First of all, for Rhode Island. In 2018, it was a huge Democrat win of 15.5%. Now in 2022, unpopular incumbent Dan McKee is facing Ashley Kalus, and this is one of those races you have to look out for, because this could very well be a surprise victory for the GOP, and all things considered, because even the pollsters have barely pulled the race, so who really knows what happens, which is the reason why I do have this going for the Democrat, I should say it's going to the Republicans by a tilt margin, sorry about that, by a margin of 0.5%, just a Republican win. And yeah, for the next one, for Minnesota, where Tim Walz is running for re-election. In 2018, he almost got 12%, 11.4% now. In 2022, he is facing Dr. Scott Jensen and Matt Burke, who, yeah, you can see right here, former football player, and the pollsters are RCP is saying Tossup, but Minnesota has stated that is really hard to crack for the GOP, which is why even in this scenario, I actually do still have Tim Walz barely winning by 8 margin. I think Minnesota is really ingrained with the Democrat Party, and Tim Walz is barely able to win here by a margin of 0.25%. And yeah, as you can see, there's one more state, and that is in New York. In New York, where Andrew Cuomo last won here by a huge margin, but the Democrats are in a weak spot in 2022, and the GOP with DeSantis, Youngkin, and almost everyone is campaigning hard for Lee Zeldin. And Kathy Hochul, or I should say Kathy Hochul, is really weak at the moment. And what Lee Zeldin needs is a huge red wave like 2010, or yeah, probably like 2010, where everything really goes wrong for the Democrats. And for the polling right here, you can already see that if the undecided voters and some of these Democrats right here go for Zeldin, hypothetically, including a polling error, Zeldin could actually just barely pull through. And in a scenario where the economy crashes before election day, the gas prices are sky high, and really the best case scenario for the GOP, Lee Zeldin would be able to win the state by a really close margin of 0.25%, if not even closer. And as you can see, in the best case scenario for the GOP and the governorships, they won with 36 seats against the Democrats' 14 seats. Thank you for watching. Like, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video.